Another question for you related to that is, what are the things that are keeping us from seeing more community banks grow and thrive and even start? Is there something that we can be doing as an industry or legislatively that needs to happen in order for us to be able to get new bank?
Yeah, so we have to understand that one of the primary reasons that we've seen a loss. We've actually lost a third of the community banks in the country over the last decade. After the great
Wow.
financial crisis, we lost a third of the banks in the country. Now, there's a couple of factors that go into that. First was the congressional response to the financial crisis, and that was the passage of the Dodd-Frank Act, Financial Reform Act back in 2010. Okay, now what that did was it actually was trying to rein in some of the abuses that took place by the big banks during the financial crisis. It was also supposed to try to end the era of too big to fail, where an institution would have to be bailed out by taxpayers. Well, if those two were the qualifications, at least on the second, that's the most failed piece of public policy in the history of the world, because the largest financial institutions have only gotten bigger and bigger and bigger since the financial crisis. Meanwhile, so what happened was that the regulations that were designed to rein in the biggest banks after the financial crisis trickled down to the smaller financial institutions and created really a necessity of scale. So we haven't seen bank failures in community banks, but what we have seen is consolidation overall. That means that there are fewer rural markets nationwide that have a banking headquarters than there's ever been in the history of this country, right? That distributed banking system that we just talked about and the need for it, that's been under attack over the last decade as these banks have tried to achieve greater and greater scale. The other piece that got layered into that was um, all of that regulation and all of that burden that gets heaped on a bank. If you were starting a new bank, you have to deal with all of that on day one that you open the door, right? So
Yeah.
you've got, you're not just starting from scratch. So historically, you could start a bank with 5 or to $10 million in capital. Okay. You go get some shareholders together, you put together the amount of capital that you need. During the pandemic era, uh, I'm sorry, during the last decade, that capital requirement's gone up to 35, $45 million. Well,
Wow.
that in and of itself, right? That creates a much higher hurdle for someone to get over if they're thinking about starting a bank, right? But that's the difference in what it's taken because of that burden that's going to be heaped upon that bank on day one, right?
Right.
For them to be able to do that. What does that mean, Cal? In reality, if you look between 1970 and 2010, although we have peaks and valleys along the way, on average, in that 40-year period, we created about 150 new banks per year, every year, on average, during that 40-year period. Okay. In the last decade or the last 12 years, we've created fewer than 50 banks in the country total. Okay. So think about that. If,
Incredible.
if just your average had continued over the last decade, we would have created about 1,500 new banks historically. We've created fewer than 50, right? So you've got net losses due to consolidation and you've got almost no new charter creation going on at the same time. Therefore, you've got a diminishing number of financial institutions nationwide and a less distributed banking system.
Yeah, that's devastating. Yeah, it would be great to see some of the new bank, de novo, uh, startups actually really start to take off again. That would be, very helpful for us in the industry that we love too. So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So I think we both agree that we definitely need more community banks throughout the nation for sure.